Now, this is Queen's Medical Centre in Nottingham. It's part of Nottingham University Hospitals Trust, which is currently the focus of what's thought to be the biggest ever NHS maternity scandal, with more than 1,000 cases currently being investigated. Today, the focus was on baby Wynter Andrews. She died at its maternity unit just minutes after she was born. A judge has now concluded that a catalogue of failings led to her death and issued them with the largest fine for an NHS hospital trust, £800,000. With the latest, here's our correspondent Bradley Harris, and just to say his report does start with some distressing details.
Wynter Andrews died in her mother's arms. She lived for just 23 minutes. Shortly after an emergency caesarean section, she died from a lack of oxygen to the brain, which could have been prevented had staff delivered her much sooner. Today, Nottingham University Hospitals NHS Trust has received a fine of £800,000. It's the largest fine to an NHS trust over maternity care.
No financial penalty will ever bring Wynter back. We feel that this sentence isn't just for Wynter, but it's for all the other babies that have gone before and after her.
This week, the court heard how the maternity unit was understaffed and the trust had failed to make sure that those on duty were aware of their own guidelines. Today, District Judge Grace Leong said the catalogue of failings and errors exposed Mrs Andrews and her baby to a significant risk of harm, which was avoidable, and such errors ultimately resulted in the death of Wynter and post-traumatic stress for Mr and Mrs Andrews. What happened to Wynter Andrews isn't an isolated case. There is a huge independent review underway into the deaths and injuries of babies in Nottingham. So far, that review is looking into over 1,000 cases.
We are already aware of some very serious cases, and the focus now has got to be on understanding the totality of our work and ensuring that we work in as thorough a way as possible, listening to families and supporting the trust to improve.
This is the first time that Nottingham University Hospitals NHS Trust has ever been criminally prosecuted. Earlier today, their chief executive apologised to Wynter's parents.
I'm very sorry to Mr and Mrs Andrews for the failings in care that led to the tragic death of baby Wynter. The trust is very focused on improving its maternity services, but there is no doubt that in the past the service has not been as good as it should be.
This has been a long-running fight for justice for Wynter's parents. Today, they take another step towards change.
So, Bradley, the CEO, they're saying that he's going to look into making real improvements, but with 1,000 cases, as you said, more than that being investigated. What can you tell us about those?
Yeah, well, CL, we know that over 400 staff are already involved with a huge independent review. That's being led by senior midwife Donna Ockenden. She's looking into maternity care across the trust following concerns raised by several families. But there's still a long way to go. Let's remember that prosecutions against NHS trusts are not very common, really. This is only one of 2 prosecutions that the Quality Care Commission has brought against a maternity unit. Today, their director said mothers have a right to safe care and treatment when having a baby, so it is unacceptable that their safety was not well managed by the trust. They say they hope this prosecution reminds care providers that they must always take all reasonable steps to ensure people's safety.